everyone, it's Robin Riley for Bello's Designs. Welcome to my video tutorial. Today's tutorial will be the bird sticker stencil card. I'll show you step by step the process to create this very unique looking card. Before we get started though, with all of the supplies that will be needed, I would like to take this time to invite you to our Facebook groups. We have two groups. We have the Bello's Design Lounge, and that's where we showcase all of the Lavinia products. The other Facebook page that we have is called the Bello's Designs a la carte, and that is the page where we showcase all of the other products that Patty currently has in her store. Now, there are other social media platforms where you can find us. We're on Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. And this is what you have to search right here. Hashtag Bello's Designs. And that's how you'll find us. Okay, let's take a look at the supplies that are going to be needed to create this card. Hopefully I have everything organized enough to share with you the supplies. But if I happen to forget one, I will mention it. And there will always be a complete list in the description box below. So let's get started with the card. I'm using a heavyweight topper that measures 4 1/4 inch by 5 3/4 inch. This weight is 300 GSM. That indicates to me that it can hold a lot of moisture without warping. Anything less will warp. Next, the card itself will go onto a base that measures 6 inches by 9 inches, and it is scored at the 4 1/2 inch mark. So when folded, that will be your card. Generally, this is the size that I use for all of my cards. Next, the inks that I'm going to be using. I will be using Elements inks in dark denim, lime punch, and olive. And if you look closely on the card, in the background where I have the sentiment, I will be using the Brilliance Moonlight White ink. To apply the inks, I will be using a variety of blending brushes. I use one for each family of colors. And I will also be using the smallest of the Lavinia stencil brushes. The other supplies that I'll be using. Today I am using the bird that is looking towards the right from the first sticker stencil pack that Lavinia produced. I will be using the stencil from Lavinia that is called Feather Leaf. And that's the design that you can see here on the bird. I will be using the See a Fairy Make a Wish LAV 485 sentiment, and that is that white area that you see in the back, along with an acrylic block for that stamp. The Smile is a sticker that comes from the sentiment sticker pack. It's actually called the Journaling Stickers Sentiment. And you have a variety of choices here to choose whatever type of sentiment you would like. Let's see, some other things that I will be using. I'm going to be using the Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White ink. And that is, I'll hold this up closer. You can see those white dots. I did that with this ink along with this stylus. We'll talk about that more as we get to that area. The markers that I colored in the stencil, I'm using a Posca metallic green along with a Jelly Roll Moonlight number 10 pen. I have created a faux frame on the outside of the card topper itself, and I used a gold Sharpie for that. To adhere the card topper to the base, I like to use the Art Glitter Designer Dries Clear Adhesive. And I believe the last thing you may want to use is a piece of acetate. And when we get to that point, I will explain why and what I use it for. Okay, let's get started. So using the topper, I am going to come in with that sticker stencil. The sticker stencils are really nice and they're reusable and they are washable. So if they lose any of the tackiness that's on the back, you can simply wash it with some dish soap and let it air dry naturally, and it will be sticky again. So I'm going to first place the bird onto the card. I'm going to center it as closely as I can. And then with just a nice soft press, it adheres to that card. And I have used this a lot, and I have yet to have it lift on me. So let's hope it doesn't decide to do that today. Okay, the first step is to create that gorgeous dark blue background. And to do that, I am using the Elements Dark Denim along with a blending brush. I am going to kind of work on an angle here. That's my preferred way of working. And I'm going to start with the ink on the sticker itself and then come outward. That just kind of helps keep from getting this super dark blob of ink. Although this entire thing is going to be extremely dark. Now this takes some time. This probably is the longest part of creating this card, because to make a background that dark, as you can see, is going to take several layers of ink. So just slowly work your way around the bird, adding one layer at a time. Now I am pushing really hard on the head of this brush, being that I really want a lot of ink to appear. As you can see, it's pretty blotchy. It's not even at all. And right now, that is okay. Because what I will do is to continue to add layer upon layer all over and around this bird, and then all the way up to the edge. Now this is when I bring in that little piece of acetate. What I want to try to do is not get any oil from my fingers onto the card so that I get a nice smooth covering of this ink. So I just place my fingers onto that acetate, hold firmly as I continue to add the ink all around the bird. Now, to save time and not bore you to death, because I have to be honest, probably for me to get that entire card as dark as I did, it probably took me every bit of 15 minutes, if not longer, of just continuing to add layer upon layer until I got the shade that I wanted. So to save time, I have already prepared a background card of the bird. So what you do to remove this is very simple. You kind of bend your card without creasing it. Bend it in an area where you can slide your fingernail under the sticker and remove. And there you should have a really nice stenciled bird. Let me set that to the side. Now, as far as cleaning goes, I stick this down onto my work surface and I grab a microfiber cloth and very gently I remove the ink that's on the bird. Clean my work surface up here. This is just damp with water, no special cleaners needed. And then I bring back the entire piece and I replace the bird as closely as I can get to that cutout area. Next, I need to remove the entire back piece. So you just separate the two pieces and pull off the part that we're going to be using next. Now, it is important to line this up as perfectly as you can, because you really do not want to see any white space between the bird and that navy, that dark denim area. So I'm going to do my best to align that. As you can see, there might be a small area here that I need to adjust. So I just play with this until I get this as perfectly aligned over that bird as I can. And I just lift and move, and then hopefully I've done a good enough job. There are ways to fix if they're not aligned perfectly. So don't worry about that. Just do your best. And to be honest, none of us are perfect, so it's okay. Okay, I smooth the rest of that sticker stencil down. Now, if you're concerned about these areas here, you could tape this off if you wanted with the low-tack tape. I am not concerned about taking my next ink color into that area because I feel I'm far enough away. But if you're not comfortable with that, please tape that off so you don't mix up your inks, so that they don't blend in together. And the other thing I did forget to mention is that navy area, you want that to be perfectly dry. If it's not dry, you may get some blending where you don't want it, and the sticker stencil itself may not stick as well as it needs to be. So you have the option of letting it sit for a few hours to dry, which is what I did with this. I actually let this piece sit overnight. Or you could take your heat tool and blow over it and make sure that it's dry. Okay, so next part, I'm coming in with the Lavinia Elements Lime Punch. And I have a brush for my lighter green shades. I'm going to load this up. And I'm going to just fill in the entire bird with this color. One of my absolute favorite color combinations is lime green and dark blue. So this was just going without me even thinking what color the bird was going to be. Without a doubt, he would be lime green. All right, so let me fill this in. And I am pushing relatively hard on the top of my brush here because I really want a nice coverage of this lime punch all over the bird. You can see how easy this is to do. And like with anything else that we create, you do you. If you want to make this a richer, deeper color of lime punch, then you just continue to add those layers until you're satisfied. Not to worry about if it's blotchy, because we're going to cover this with the stencil, so it's really okay, and it's not imperative that it be super smooth. But to be honest, with these element inks, it's really easy to get a nice, smooth layer of ink. So, okay, we have the bird colored in green. Now what I'm going to do, I'm switching out brushes because I happen to have a brush for dark greens, and I'm going to use the Elements Olive along with that feather leaf stencil. Now you want to play around with this maybe and find how you would like the pattern to appear on the bird. You can even flip it over to possibly find another pattern that you're liking. So I'm just going to go randomly, and I'm going to just lay this down here. I'm going to load up my dark green brush, and I'm going to push rather firmly through this stencil so that I get a nice contrast between the two greens. I want to be able to see 2 shades of green when I remove this. It's okay if it's not perfectly even as far as the ink goes, because you are going to color on top of this next. So let's take a peek. All right, that looks wonderful to me. So as you can see, there are some of the areas of the stencil is rather dark and some is rather light, and that's just perfectly fine. That's not a problem whatsoever. So get in a habit of wiping down your stencil as soon as you're done using it. Yes, they stain, but that does not prohibit the use of them. You just want to make sure you get all the ink off the best you can so that the next time you use it, you don't contaminate the next color that you will be using. Okay. Now, before I remove this part of the sticker stencil, what I'm going to do is use one of the smallest of the Lavinia stencil brushes. And you know what? I actually forgot a color, a Lavinia color. Hang on one second. I forgot to pull out the Midnight Blue. I'm going to use the Midnight Blue to outline the edge of the bird. Now this takes some practice and it can be a little bit tricky, but how else do we learn unless we try? So I'm going to tamp that right into the ink pad. I'm going to take off the excess just into the cup. And what I'm going to do is very gently, I am going to go around the edge of the stencil, and I only want to leave a very small amount of ink on the bird. As you can see, the majority of the ink is on the stencil card itself. So take your time going around, and you should get a nice, smooth outline of the bird. Now, if you look on this card, I used a different color. I used the dark denim, and after I did it, I did not like the appearance of it. So that's why I switched to this one here, the Midnight Blue. I wanted something a little darker than the background itself. All right, I just added a little more ink, and I want to just work around that edge very carefully, very slowly. And don't worry if some areas the ink kind of gets a little fatter and it's not as thin. Like I said, this just takes a lot of practice. Sometimes just going in a circular motion works fine for me. Other times I literally just drag the brush along the edge and I get a thinner line that way. So again, you have to practice and you have to find out what works best for you. I do know not to have a ton of ink on these brushes. Even though they're small, they're mighty. And they hold a great deal of ink. Now, it gets a little trickier when you get into these narrow areas. So just take your time. Don't worry. It all works out in the end. All right, let me get around here to this thin leg. And another area, it's just a little tricky, so take your time going over the talon and the leg itself. Just take your time. Looks like a hot mess right now, but as soon as we remove this sticker, you'll be surprised what you see. Okay, I think we're going to just stop there and hope when we open this up, I got good coverage. So this is easy to peel off because some of the sticker stencil is just hanging off the edge. So I'm just going to gently remove this. Okay, and I'm content with that outlining. Now there's a little bit of a line here where I didn't have it perfectly aligned, but I'm not going to mess with that. I'm going to leave that alone. Now you could, if you wanted to, take a fine paintbrush, go in with that midnight blue and try to fill in that line. But to be honest with you, I'm not going to touch it. I'm very happy with the way that turned out. Okay, so once again, tap that down onto your work surface. Using a damp cloth, just carefully remove the ink. And then we're going to replace it back onto its carrier sheet. I just do my best to get it aligned as best as I can. And if it's not perfect, it's okay. As long as you have the majority of it on, you're fine. I try to keep, as you can see, one edge up as I press down here on the bottom, and I will work my way to the top so that it's nice and flat. And then when I store it, I don't have to worry about anything getting bent or having a crease in it. All right, let's look at this bird again. And here's when I come in with the colored pens. So I'm going to give my Posca pen a nice shake. Now, ideally, you would let this sit for several minutes so that you know all of that ink is perfectly dry. Because when using a Posca pen or any pen, and you try to color on top of that, it's very easy to tear that top layer of your ink if it's wet. So go gentle. Even if you think it's dry enough, go gentle. So what I'm going to do is just randomly pick some of these squirrely areas. I'm going to trace them and just fill them in. I love this combination of colors. Just something about this teal metallic that gives a little shimmer and shine to the bird. So very randomly, like I said, you choose. This is all up to you and your likings, where you would like to see these colors appear. So let's just add a few over here. Again, remember, don't press hard on top of this ink, even if you know that it's dry, because it's very easy to tear that top layer of the card. All right, let's just add a few more of this color. And then what I'll do is I will go in with that really bright, I don't even know what color. I know it says Moonlight 10, but to be honest, I don't know. It's just kind of a neat color, and I thought it went well with everything that's already on this card. Okay, maybe one more. Let me get one more in this area. And I better do something on the tail, or that will drive me crazy. Now, I didn't attempt to try anything over the legs with that stencil just because I have done it in the past. I think on the original you can see where I did do it, but it can get a little hair-raising. So I thought, you know what, this time we're going to leave them alone, and we're going to just let them be plain and outlined, and that would be sufficient. Okay, I'm going to stop there with this metallic green, and I'm going to come in with this Moonlight 10 gel pen and add some of this color, and watch how this pops. And even though this is on top of a water-based ink, I'm not getting much bleed through, so that's wonderful. Naturally, the Posca paint, it's not going to bleed through, but I was relatively surprised when I did it with this gel pen that I didn't get a lot of bleed through. So I was pretty pleased with that. All right, let's get this nice area here filled in. Naturally, you are going to take your time in this. I'm just kind of speeding through here. You'll do a much nicer job of coloring in these sections because you will take your time. All right, let's get a few more of these areas with this neat color. It's almost a fluorescent pink, but yet not really pink. I don't know. It's just a great color. I like it, and I'm happy with it. All right, let's take a look and see. Do we want to add? I may just add this here, this little line here for some interest. And I think we'll just let it be at that. All right, so the bird is coming along nicely. The next thing that we're going to do is add that Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof white ink. So let me show you a little trick when using a stylus. So I dip the end. My stylus, I have a very large ball on one end here. Hopefully you can see that size. And a much smaller ball end on here. And I'm going to use this end, the smaller end, because this is some tight work in here. And I want to try to control where these dots are going. So I simply tap that ball itself into the ink, tap off a little bit of the excess. So that's kind of the amount of ink I need. And I'm going to choose one area, and I am going to do consecutive dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, hopefully you can see that that white dot started out large, and each time I press it down, it becomes smaller. It just naturally happens. And I love the effect of that. These stylus tools are used for a variety of crafts. There are dotting crafts out there, and these are actually used in nail salons for placing dots on fingernails. So it's just kind of fun to see that graduated look. As you can see, I have to dip into the ink every single time I use this. I am always starting on the largest area of that swirl and working down to the point, and I'm always doing an odd number of dots. So let me get some here. If you want a mindful activity, dotting is an amazing activity to do. As far as concentration, it's got to be there. You have to concentrate to do this. And the outcome is just so well worth it. I absolutely love dotting. So when I was able to incorporate this into my cards, it was a win-win for me. Okay, I'm only going to do that one, and I'm going to stop there. Hopefully you can see the graduated sizes of those dots. Just fun. And the nice thing about this bleed proof white ink is it is what it says, bleed proof. So it's not going to suck up any of the other ink colors underneath. A lot of people will do dotting with acrylic paints, which is fine. The thing is, though, if you would use acrylic paint on this, your white dots would not be white. They would turn a lighter shade of the ink that is underneath. So that's one of the main reasons I like using the bleed-proof white ink. Okay, it dries rather quickly, so we're just going to give this a few seconds to dry. And I'm going to bring in my stamp now, the sentiment, and I am going to use it on an acrylic block. Now, when stamping a sentiment for the background, the idea is truly not to read the words. This is just to give us some interest. So check out this ink. This Brilliance ink always comes with a plastic top here. And I don't know that you can read it, but it says do not discard. This is a protective liner that helps this ink stay wet longer, and definitely works, believe me. Okay, so all I'm going to do is tap some of this ink. I want to see what I'm doing here. I'm going to tap some of this ink on lightly. And then I'm going to just press this into the background to give me some interest. I want to be able to line this up as straight as I can. I apologize if I just bumped the camera with my head. Okay, so that's what I wanted. Just a very light print of this script in the background. As you can see, I don't think I'm going to have to re-ink. One inking was good. I have a very faint script in the back. I may redo this one here. I can barely see it here. So let me grab just a tad bit more ink. And let me see if I can get a little bit more. Yes, there, that's a little bit better. So again, like I said, you cannot see to read this real clearly, but that's not the idea. The idea is just to create some interest and some depth into your card. So if you're using this Brilliance ink, make sure you put that protective cover on and then close it. Brilliance ink cleans up just like all other inks, just with water. Very simple and easy to use. All right, now our next step is going to be adding one of our stickers to the bird. In the original card that I did, I used a smile sticker. So I'm going to just try to find another sticker here on this that I can use that will, let's just go with Beauty. I think that's a nice size and a nice color behind it. And I'm going to grab a piece of scrap paper and I'm placing this sticker itself onto the scrap paper. I want this to be a little more sturdy. Plus, I want to edge this. I want to give it a little shimmer. Can't do that holding it. I need to set it down, sorry. Okay, so all I'm doing is placing this onto a piece of scrap white card. I'm going to cut it out. And I'm going to edge this, give this a faux frame. This will tie in with the faux frame that the card is going to have. Okay, so to create that faux frame on this small little piece, let me pull out my cards here that I do this on. And I'm using a gold Sharpie, gold metallic. And I'm just going to run my marker along the edge of that sticker to create that faux frame. Now, something to keep in mind about these stickers. They do, let me show you what I'm saying. See, they're all kind of on that green background. But I have found that if I just take some ink, doesn't matter what ink I'm using, and I blend a color on top of that sticker, I can change it to almost match everything that I'm working on so that I'm not always stuck with that green sticker. So something to keep in mind if you were wondering about that set color that's on there. All right, so now I have Beauty. I don't know, hopefully you can see that it has that gold edge on it. And using the glue, I'm just going to adhere this to the card. All right. Don't need much of this glue. I think I'll just set it down here in the corner. Now I'm going to create that faux frame around the card topper itself. So same process. I work on a scrap card and I use the top card to hold everything in place. I give myself a little leeway, just enough so I can see the edge of the card itself. I take my marker With my right hand, I am pressing firmly on everything underneath, and then I will slowly drag this gold marker down the entire length of the card topper, and it creates a perfectly fine gold line. The trick to this is holding firm, dragging the pen slowly, and always following the tip of that pen with your eyes. For me, that's what works the best. If I forget and not follow the tip of that pen with my eye, I have a tendency to go further into the card and make a mess of a card. So slow and steady, that's my best tip when it comes to making the faux frames. All right, that's done. And the last thing we have to do is to place this on our card base. This is a 6x9 card that has been scored at 4.5 inches. And again, just using the designer glue, I run a small bead of glue around the edge of the card. I do not go to the very edge of the card. I go in about 1/8 of an inch to maybe even 1/4 of an inch at some point. But the reason I do that is so that when I press the card on to the base, I don't have oozing of my glue. If it oozes, it's just going to ooze to the edge of that topper. So let's get that on there, press it down firmly. And there you have it, another bird card. So take a look at this one. This is the one I said I had used the dark denim for the outline. I really don't like the way that came out. I am much happier by using the midnight blue on that card. So there you go. Hopefully I explained this well enough that you'd be willing to give this a go and give it a try. And if you do, please tag me in the post. Show everybody in our group what you've done. I would love to see your makes. Thank you so very much for taking the time to watch this. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And just know that we are thrilled that you take the time to watch all of our videos. Thanks so much. See you again. Bye-bye.